Hey everyone! This is the full MagicaVoxel tutorial series in one video. We'll be building this house from scratch together, step by step, with more tips and tricks along the way. It's everything you need to know about MagicaVoxel and how to create voxel art with it. If you're ready, let's go! MagicaVoxel is a free, super fun tool for creating the 3D pixels. Think of it like Lego, but on your screen. It's lightweight, easy to use, and perfect for bringing your wildest ideas to life. To download MagicaVoxel, just head to GitHub. I'll put the link in the description below. Go to the download section and grab the version for your system. Once it's downloaded, unzip the folder and boom, you're ready to go. No installation. When you open MagicaVoxel, you see this little default cube. Don't like it? Just click clear in the top right corner, or hit delete on your keyboard and poof, it's gone. To navigate around, right-click and swing it around. To rotate, use the scroll to zoom in and out, and middle-click and drag to pan around the workspace, or use the view cube in the bottom right corner. For keyboard shortcuts, think of it like a video game. WASD on keyboard to move your view up and down, left and right. You can also switch between different views, perspective, orthographic, isometric. It's all there, just pick your favorite. You can also turn on grids, shadows and edges from the bottom left corner to keep things clean and precise. We have these three main modes: attach, erase and paint. And 6 sub-modes: voxel, box, face, pattern, shader, and geometry. But don't panic, we're keeping this simple. So now let's start building. Press T to enter attach mode. Use V for single voxel, B for big chunky boxes, and F to fill entire faces. Need to fix something? Switch to erase mode by holding Shift while dragging. You can delete single voxels, big voxels, or even whole faces. Now it's time to get colorful. Press G to enter paint mode. Use V for voxel paint, B for box paint, and F for face paint. Same shortcuts, different vibes. Want to move part of your model? Just press M to enter mark or selection mode. Select the section you want, then just hold Ctrl and drag to move it along any axis. Now let's talk symmetry, because why do extra work, right? So click X, Y, or Z on the left to turn on mirroring. Over on the left, you'll see the color palette with multiple palettes. Pick any shade and start painting your voxels. Want to customize? Just click a color square and tweak it to get to the exact hue you're looking for. Don't be afraid to experiment, this is your playground. On the right, you'll find the edit panel. Rotate, flip, scale, repeat, and do so much more to your model here. Your saved files show up in the projects panel on the right. Now, here's something super cool, the world mode. Press tab or this little arrow up here and boom, you can step back and manage multiple objects at once. Need to move your house next to a little tree or scale everything to fit a bigger scene? World mode is your friend, so always remember that. It's perfect for setting up bigger and more complex environments or scenes. Now let's see your model in all its glory. Press F2 or click on render on top to enter render mode. Adjust the lighting and shadows and make it shine. In render mode, play with the sun and ambient light to get the perfect lighting. For a quick screenshot, click on this little camera at the bottom, or just simply press Ctrl+6 to capture the window. But if you need a higher resolution render, just go to the image panel, set your resolution, and hit render. If your PC is struggling, just lower the resolution in the top right corner. Before we jump into modeling, I want to quickly talk about my two main approaches to building in MagicaVoxel. Sometimes I like to start from scratch, just playing around with big chunks of cubes without worrying much about colors or details at first. Some of the times I import highly detailed assets from my old work and adjust them based on my vision. It really depends on my mood and the idea I have in mind. But for my isometric house series, for example, the one we're gonna be doing in this tutorial, I usually begin with basic shapes to build a strong foundation before adding details. Alright, let's set up our MagicaVoxel workspace for better control over the scene size. At this stage, I just want to block out the main forms and get a sense of how everything fits together. I like to start big, so I set my object size to 256 by 256, which is also the maximum limit of a single object in MagicaVoxel. So now here I'm just picking a basic color and then fill my object, fill the whole object. Next, I switch to word mode to set up my scene. To estimate the size, I quickly add some cubes to define the borders of my base. So here I'm just simply holding shift and clicking drag with the left mouse button. So shift and drag, it's gonna duplicate your object. So I'm just gonna add some more cubes to shape the initial structure that I might think that I like. At this point, it's more about experimenting, you know, what looks good to you, what feels right to you. Once I'm a bit into modeling, I like to see how it looks rendered. So I set up a basic render and rough lighting. If half your model disappears when you render, it's because sparse under geometry is off. Turn it on to make sure your entire model is visible. For this video, I'm keeping the lighting setup simple, but in the upcoming videos, I'll dive deeper into how I approach lighting in detail. The focus here is purely on modeling. I usually prefer working with a darker background because it makes my model pop and stand out. So now this is just a matter of finding the perfect outline, finding the best foundation and base for the house. So I keep moving around objects, I keep rendering to see how it's looking. If you want to save a camera angle, you go down here with this camera presets. You choose a number and then you press 7 on the keyboard. And then when you want to load that shot, you just press 8. This is actually super useful for switching between views without losing your perfect shots. Okay, now I'm just gonna make some quick stills to see how the structure would look. So now I'm just mostly playing around with shapes, experimenting to see what works. The tools I use the most are box, face, voxel, and geometry. Things like spheres and other basic forms. Here I'm just exploring different shapes to find something that I like. I change my mind a lot during the process. I try different things, experiment with shapes, and sometimes I just ditch entire sections if they don't feel right. I test, tweak, and rebuild until something clicks. Right now I'm using the geometry tool, specifically the circle geometry tool, to create an arch. If you're familiar with my work, you've probably noticed that I use arches a lot. I honestly don't know where this obsession comes from, but there's just something about these voxelated cute little arches that hits different. I render often while working because it helps me check how the model looks with lighting and rendering. Seeing it come together in real time allows me to make better adjustments, so I constantly check the rendered version. I think think I need a little window on this other side wall. So I just copy paste the other arch that I had. I'm gonna place it in the right spot. If I want to have a brush in the shape of my arch, I just fill the empty space with another color, and then I select that color and I create a pattern brush. Want to use the pattern brush, you press P on the keyboard. The same main tools that we always use, you can also use it with pattern brush. So I'm gonna hollow out this cube right here, copy paste it so we have another little window on the other side so we get some light inside. Let's move around these arches because they were looking too flat and too boring. So I'd like to add some volume to the whole thing. Maybe tweak with the size of the arch a little bit here to see how it looks. I think this is gonna be some kind of like an entrance to the house, maybe. I'm using a shader to create stairs here to speed up my process. Instead of manually just sculpting each step, this shader helps me generate a structured stair shape quickly, saving a ton of time. If you don't know what shaders are, don't worry, I'll cover them in depth in another video. But for now, I'll drop a link in the description so you can get them all. Setting them up is super easy. Just download the shader, place it inside the shaders folder in your MagicaVoxel location, and you're good to go. So for the trees, I'm using Realistic Voxel 3 Asset Pack, which you can find in the link below. But if you prefer, you can create your own in Blender or any other 3D program and just import them in OBJ format. You can also model trees directly in MagicaVoxel if that's your style. Thanks to ModeVis, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but yeah, thanks to him and this asset pack, I can quickly drop in realistic voxel trees. This pack comes with a guide, so you can go through the options, pick the one you like, and simply drag and drop it into your project. The only limitation with this is the single object size limit in Magica. This works fine for most projects, but since I usually create huge scenes, I often find that this size isn't enough for the scale I need. As a workaround, this is how I scale up trees. I cut the model in half, scale each half individually, and then stitch them back together. Also, one thing I really love about voxel trees and foliage in general is how they look from different distances. From afar, they can look surprisingly realistic, especially when they have a lot of detail. But when you get up close, you start to see all these little tiny cubes, which I think makes them even more cute. Once the pieces are aligned, I group them as a single object using Ctrl R. That way, I can move it around easily as a single unit, just like any other object. When you're in world mode, you'll notice a layer panel on the left, next to your color palette. This is super useful for keeping everything organized. I use it all the time to separate different elements. For example, placing foliage in one layer and buildings in another. This way, you can toggle layers on and off, making it much easier to manage your scene and keep control over everything. Alright, now let's add another tree to bring in more variation. To keep things from looking too boring, I rotate, flip, and rescale the trees, creating a more dynamic and natural look. The foliage composition is looking good so far, but I'm not a fan of this little one branch sticking out. It's kind of distracting. So I'll jump into the voxel tool, erase the parts that feel out of place, and clean it up a bit. Now let's build some simple wooden windows. Since windows are usually symmetrical, I use the face and box tools in mirror mode. This speeds up the process and keeps everything neat and balanced. We're gonna add details later. Right now it's just about getting the base structure and checking the scale. It's easy to get lost in details. I do too sometimes. But it helps to remind yourself to focus on the bigger picture first and come back to details later. When I don't want to freehand everything, I use this simple technique. I select a shape that I want, like this arch for example, scale it down slightly, give it a new color using I on the keyboard, then select and delete the color. This leaves me with a perfect outline for the shape that I need. The selection tool is also really handy. You can select, copy, paste, scale, or recolor any part of your model quickly. I'm just populating the scene with the windows that I just made, adjusting their size to fit the arches. Copy-pasting elements not only speeds up the process, but also it keeps everything visually consistent. I really didn't like how the big windows looked for the door, so I'm creating this custom arch instead. Let's see how it fits. Let's add a small garden to bring in some life. I also try to work evenly across the whole scene instead of focusing too much on one part at a time. Keeping everything at the same level of detail really helps with overall consistency, except for the trees of course, since they are already detailed because I imported them. But for anything I'm creating from scratch, I follow this basic to detailed approach to keep everything balanced. Now let's adjust everything a bit more. It's starting to come together. Now let's create a small balcony railing. I'm using the Vox tool, slowly shaping it into something simple, yet visually interesting. Here's a cool tool I want to show you. I think it's called Wrap. It's super useful when you have a base object and you want to just repeat it seamlessly. Go to the Transform tool on the left under the Transform panel. This tool lets you repeat your shape in any direction. For example, if you drag the little scaling cube, it automatically tiles your geometry along all axes. It's a huge time saver and I use it a lot, especially when working with larger scenes where I need to stitch objects together seamlessly. When stitching objects together, it's important to pay attention to the borders, how each object connects and aligns, so everything looks smooth and cohesive. Alright, let's start adding more details. I think if I add bigger arches and define the edges a bit more, it'll make the building visually more interesting. For example, the arch I want to create here is larger than 256, so I'll use the same technique I used for the trees. I cut the arch in two, scale up each half, then copy paste and flip to create a seamless larger arch. I think it's looking pretty good, but I'm not loving this small window over here. Let's get rid of it. The balcony railing looked too harsh in that brown color, so I'm just gonna recolor it. Now let's create a fountain. Instead of making a new shape from scratch, I'll copy paste the one I already used for the garden border. Next, I'll add a solid blue placeholder to represent our water. Don't worry, this won't be the final look. Here I am again getting lost in details, which I know I shouldn't do. I really need to stick to my own advice, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Like with this balcony railing, it looks way too bulky and awkward. I just have to fix it. Just a small touch of detail already elevates the whole look, making it feel more polished and realistic. The fountain looks a bit too big, so I'm adjusting the size to make sure it fits well with the rest of the scene. Now let's move on to the roof. I go to the shape tool in the edit panel, create a simple pyramid, and color it just to make it easier to work with. The diagonal tool in the edit panel is also super handy for creating slanted shapes. I rotate the pyramid on the Z-axis, position it over the building, and adjust the size. Place the pyramid and use the wrap tool to repeat the base shape. And just like that, the roof is done. I group all the objects together to check how it looks. Now let's add some extra details to the roof. I start with a basic cylinder, then scale up the scene so I can use dilate effectively. I hollow out the cylinder using Hull, delete the top and bottom faces, then dilate it to give it more volume. Once I get the right shape, I delete the bottom half, resize it, and go back to my favorite tool, the repeat function. The base looks good, but it's still a bit large, so I scale it down to 0.8. Again, now that I'm happy with the size, I'm just gonna copy paste it all over to form the final roof pattern. Now let's rotate it slightly to match the roof's angle. Perfect. Next, I use the diagonal tool again to create the edges and this angle right here. Then mirror it to get the other side. Same process for both sides. Once everything looks good, I group all the objects together and the roof is done. Now let's add a simple chimney using a basic cube. I use the same Hull, delete and dilation technique to give it shape. Looks good for now. At this point, unfortunately, I lost about 45 to 50 minutes of footage, which only recorded a black screen. So I don't exactly remember everything that I did, but the most important parts were modeling this fountain centerpiece. So here I used the sphere tool, hollowed it out, deleted the face and dilated it. Then copy-pasted, resized, and added a few details. When working with dilating, make sure to size up your working area before doing it, or you're gonna get these unwanted flat edges. And then I added a mini supportive arch to the balcony here, right here. So for this, I used the geometry tool, created a sphere, extruded it, deleted parts until I had just a quarter left. Then I used hold, delete, dilate to shape it. Before wrapping up, let's refine our scene a little bit more and just take a look at what we've built so far. Right now our model looks nice, but it feels empty. It's raw and unfinished. I want to make some adjustments to the model. Let's start with stairs. I want to add some details. I just realized that I don't have the right color selected, so hold down Alt to color pick and click on the color that you want and it selects the color. Leave with mirror mode on. So press B for box mode, using T attach. And now let's add some details. Okay, I think I kind of want to add a little garden over here. So let's just select the existing garden that we made before. Hold down Shift and drag to duplicate it. Let's align it better with the stairs. Maybe even make it smaller. I really don't like this L shape right here, so I'm just gonna make it smaller. Okay, now let's create a corner for the stairs. Hold down Shift and drag to duplicate, go to diagonal and rotate it along Z axis and place it where it feels right to you, and then duplicate again, holding down Shift and drag along X-axis, flip and place it. So to boolean or to merge two objects together, you have to hold down Shift and select all the objects you want to merge together. You need to keep that in mind that MagicaVoxel's limit for each single object is 256 by 256. So it means that if an object is too big, parts of it gets cut off, just like this. But don't worry, if it's too big, you can just select all the objects and press Ctrl R to group them together. So when you do that, it will be so much easier to move stuff around, so you don't have to do it separately for each part. The fountain looks too small now compared to everything else, so let's scale it up. If you hold down Shift while you're scaling down or up, you can do it on both sides. So I think the left side needs a roof too, otherwise it looks too empty. So just gonna copy a roof, paste it, rotate it 90 degrees and adjust the placement. So let's create some walls around it. Let's see how it looks. Move around some trees, the roof. But now we need to move the trees. So select all the trees and Ctrl R to group them to be able to move them all together. Let's put a little window over here. I just duplicate. I just copy pasted the other window that I created. If you remember when we talked about layers, I put all of my trees in a layer, so when I want to work on this wall, for example, the trees were in my way. So I just simply turned off the layer with trees in it to adjust my window, and then I turned it back on. Let's get rid of all the extra voxels that we don't need. Okay, so I'm thinking a bright stone textured floor and kind of like a warm orange toned worn plaster walls. For textures, I use Polyhaven. It's a website that you can use for textures, for free textures, free 3D objects, free HDRIs for your renders, which we'll get to in the next video. It's really nice. I'm gonna link it down below for you guys. Also, since MagicaVoxel doesn't need high-res textures, I'm just gonna download them at 1K resolution. There are two ways to store and access textures in MagicaVoxel. First is to save textures or even specific assets in a separate file to keep things more organized. This makes it easier to reuse textures across different projects and avoid clutter. As you can see here, I have this texture file saved here. In project, you just have to press P, click on this star. In the brush panel, select your texture that you want and just click. You can have as many as you want. Press 9, 0, minus, and plus on your keyboard to rotate your textures. Obviously, the scale is too big. Press 5 on the keyboard to frame the texture in your viewport. Go to Edit panel and scale it down to half the size. Change the size of your object to 256 by 256. And now let's expand the texture using the wrap tool. This is gonna work if your texture is seamless. If it's not seamless, the borders are gonna show. So it's always better to pick a seamless texture. The texture feels too dark for what I want. So I'm just gonna adjust the color in the color palette a little bit. Hold down Shift and select multiple colors in your texture. Head over to color palette, holding down Shift, pick multiple colors that you want, and right click on them. Go down to this little icon over here, and it gives it a random coloring. Yeah, I think I like this better. Okay, now Control A to select the texture, press P to select brush, come down to the setting and create pattern from selection. So now we go to our object, P for pattern brush, G for paint. We're just going to paint. Get rid of all the extra voxels overlapping each other between two objects. I'm not really liking this purple kind of shade, so I'm changing it to something more orangey. Also, the edges look too dark to me, so let's hold down Alt, click on the color that we don't like to reveal it in color palette. and just make them a little bit lighter. If you want to copy paste a color in your color palette, hold down Ctrl Shift, click and drag the color you want into the slot that you want. Now let's do a texture for the walls. This kind of feels like a worn out plaster kind of wall to me, but I still need to adjust the colors a little bit to match the whole vibe of my scene. So the same technique, let's just get rid of all this unwanted noise. Yes, feels more like it. Now again, Ctrl A to select the pattern. Create a pattern from the selection and let's get to work. Since the rotation is off, you have to press 9 on your keyboard to rotate the texture, aligning the axis that you want. When you save your project, all assets inside it are automatically saved and accessible in the project panel, and is really great for quick access. So if I only need textures for one single project, I just keep them inside the same file. It just depends on your workflow. If painting textures on some objects might be too slow or too time-consuming like this is, there's another tool that you can use. For example, for this arch right here, it's gonna take forever for me to manually paint on every single face. Sometimes I do it just because it feels nice, it's kind of therapeutic. But if you want to save time, I'm just gonna demonstrate it real quick here. So imagine you have this arch right here, you want to texture it really fast. Align the texture with your object. Get it as close as possible to your object. Select both of them and merge them into a single object. You need to have the texture in the same scene as your object to be able to do it. F to interface mode, G for paint, and set the use voxel color to geometry connectivity and drag across the surface to apply textures quickly. As you can see, this method is really fast, but sometimes you need to clean it up manually. Okay, let's jump into another texture. Let's adjust the colors a little bit more. I select this darker color and I delete it to create some kind of displacement. Ctrl A to select the texture and create pattern brush from selected. Let's go to our stairs here. P for pattern brush, G for paint, and just simply paint our texture there. Select and just delete. Select all those dark colors. Select multiple colors in my color palette. Add a random noise. Now let's duplicate our stair, move it all the way over here. Get rid of all the extra voxels, overlapping with the rest of the objects. Get rid of this too, adjust it again. Perfect. The roof looks a little bit big. Let's adjust it too. Instead of resizing one by one, I just resize one and copy paste and flip it. Let's do the same fast texturing method on this arch as well. So align the texture, resize it to fit your model, select all of them, merge them, and just simply drag. Okay, now I want to cut a hole in my ground for the fountain. So what I'm gonna do is to copy paste the shape of the fountain, color it in something really flashy so it's easy for me to see. And then I create a pattern brush, a custom pattern brush from the red color. And just as easily, you can delete the ground based on the shape of your fountain. Get rid of all the extra voxels. Let's put back our water. Now let's add some more texture to our fountain edges. Sometimes I just pick random colors from a texture and make a pattern brush out of it, just to add some variation to the texture. Now that we have our Tuscan villa, I think we need to replace those trees. I think this is a better option. So I'm just gonna import our tree, use the same method as I explained in the previous video. Because the tree is 128, which is really small, we have to kind of scale it up. I copy pasted, cut them in half, scale them up. And then group the two objects together. When you scale it up, all the voxels kind of look too bulky and too big compared to the rest of the scene. So this is a trick that you can use. Select multiple colors in your palette by holding down Shift. Use the random color. Get rid of all the other colors, maybe delete 2 or 3 of the colors. And then you can add back some of the colors. But actually I'm not really convinced about the size of this one. It kind of looks too chunky. So let's import again the same tree. Let's do the same method on it. Get rid of some voxels to get more details. Let's see how this one looks. I think the smaller one looks better. Let's just leave it there for now and then we decide in the end. Now let's take another look into our mood board and see. Most of these Tuscan villas and homes have kind of like a metal balcony railing. So it's not exactly how we did it here. So I'm just gonna get rid of it and I'm just gonna try to create a balcony railing from scratch. But first we need to add some details to our balcony itself. So I'm just copy pasting the stairs that we just textured, put them here, adjust the size. Okay, now let's create something really simple. We don't want to go overboard with the details. So let's just create something really simple for the balcony railing. I'm just using box brush and attach. Fit the model size, mirror mode on, and let's add some just random voxels to add a little bit more detail. Nothing too fancy. Select this one, copy paste, control drag to move it. Let's flip it to add some more shape to it. The famous wrap tool. Now let's add some more details to our roof. Let's change the angle to fit the angle of our roof. Looks okay. Let's get rid of the unwanted voxels, duplicate it, flip it, and that's it. Now let's group objects, Ctrl R, hold down Shift and drag to duplicate it for the other side. Now let's create another cylinder for the center part, align it, perfect. Okay, now let's work a little bit more on the detailing on the doors. To avoid working too much, I just copy paste the one I already have and adjust the size. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm really not a fan of the smaller structure that we added later. Let's just keep it simple without any roof. Maybe we can make it into a little garden. I'm just reusing the walls that we had before to shape it. Okay, let's add more details to our little chimney here. Resize it first. Mirror it. Activate mirror on X and Y. Let's delete some voxels, maybe add some to create more details. Now to make a tiny chimney, make a tiny roof for our chimney, just duplicate our roof, scale it down. Mirror it. Place it right above our chimney. Make it a little bit smaller. I think it looks good. Now let's texture it the same method. Okay, now let's create some grass for our garden. I'm using a grass shader. I will put the link below in the description. Import another tree to try and shape our hedge for the garden. Let's see how it works. I just got rid of the bigger tree because I thought the sizing of the tree looked a little bit off. So I'm just gonna stick with the smaller one. Now I need to create a brush from the shape of the arch we have in the garden. I'm gonna fill it with another color. I'm gonna select that color and I'm gonna create a pattern brush out of that color. And then you will have a pattern brush in the perfect shape of your garden, which I'm gonna delete it from our grass right here. So I'm just gonna duplicate my grass and try to shape the garden. Duplicate the grass, put it on this side. Now let's try to shape the hedge that we created. Give it some random noise color and place it. I'm gonna use the other tree to try and add more plant shape thing to it. Add random noise color and place it in between just to create some variation. Try to trim it down, scale it. Duplicate for the other side. It's just a rough placement, guys. It's definitely not going to stay the same. So I just want to see how the hedge is looking. Let's add another tree. I'm gonna use this tree as this kind of plant that hangs over a wall. I don't know if it's called wisteria or something, that has, you know, little purple flowers all over hanging from the wall. I really always like those. So I'm going to try and recreate the same effect using this kind of tree. Let's get rid of some unwanted voxels right here to shape it a little bit more. Put some on our balcony. It's always nice to have plants. Now let's add some pots. I'm starting with a base sphere shape. Size up your object. Create a little bit of detail on the top part, flip it, and using the whole object and dilation, we're gonna give it some thickness. Copy paste the top part to add a little bit more detail. I don't want it to be perfect in shape because I want it to look more realistic. That's why I cut some parts. I rotate them sometimes randomly just to create more details. Let's create another one. This one, I want it to look more curvy. So I'm just gonna kind of keep the shape of the sphere. Same technique with dilation and dull. Let's copy paste and spread it all over our scene. Having more props actually makes it look more realistic, more lived in. Sometimes I mix and match. You can just merge the two pots you just created together and create a new shape. Some of it, maybe it's broken, maybe it's worn out, I don't know. We need some plants and pots for the balcony. You can never have enough pots and plants, am I right? All these little details on these doors or windows on the balcony seem a little bit too much for me. It kind of looks like noise. So I'm just gonna get rid of all of those. Now let's give our water some material so it looks more like water and not just a solid surface. I will explain everything about lighting, materials, and camera render setting in the next video. But for now, when you are in render, you go to the matter panel on the right and you click on this little cube right here, which is material. In MagicaVoxel, material is applied to each color. So each color holds not only data from the color codes, but also holds data from the material. To give this water transparent material, you have to have this color selected. Alt-click on the water to have the color selected in your palette, and then you move on to glass right here. You make it 100% transparent, and then you will have to tweak a little bit the setting right here to see how much reflective you want it to be, how much the density you want to have. The more density you have, it's gonna show the color of your water more. You can just play around with the setting. Now let's do something about our little fountain here. I just copy paste it to have the perfect size, and I'm gonna put some of our water blue here. Scale it down. Now let's add some lamps just to add a little bit more detail. It's always nice to have props. You can obviously import OBJ files if you already have some assets, but sometimes if it's just something basic, I rather to create it from scratch. So here I just use some basic box to create a base, and then a cone to create the body of the lamp. And now I'm gonna add some details. I think it looks a little bit too big, so let's scale it down. Duplicate it and put it all over our scene. Let's get back to our garden. Let's make the edges. Move on to add some glass to our doors. Go back to glass. Make it transparent. Tweak with the setting until you get something that you like. I want it to be more reflective. Let's just move the glass forward a little bit more. We do the same for the windows up top. Actually, let's get rid of all these little details here as well. I'm really not a fan of them. Even more. Do the same for the windows. Perfect. I'm using rifle shader to add some damage to my fountain so it doesn't look really, brand new, because it's an old place. So we need to create some damage. Sometimes I use rifle shader on its own, but some of the time I feel like, for example, for this, I want to manually create some kind of like tile. Let's grab our pattern brush, add some of the texture we used on the ground. We want it on the edge of the garden. I'm just picking a color and delete to add some sort of displacement and kind of like a damaged effect. I don't copy paste exactly everything that I do. Sometimes I just do them manually to create more variation, so it's not always exactly the duplication of the other one. So let's add some manual detailing right here. Let's add more details to the walls. You have to really tweak with the shader options to get the look that you want and you feel like it's good. This is the same texture that we used for the stairs in its original color. I'm using the darker color and I'm just gonna scale it down to create the displacement effect. Now it's just a matter of duplicating it all over your model. Now let's bring in another texture. So for this, I'm gonna just use this texture partially, some part of the texture. Now let's add some displacement to this wall using the pattern brush that we had. Just add our texture to this wall as well. Sometimes when I feel like it's too much of some texture, I just select one color and I just apply the texture to that one specific color. It makes it less obvious. And it's always a good choice to do layering on textures. So what I mean by layering is not be happy with just one layer of texture. You have a base layer and then you can go on adding more and more layers. I'm just trying to try different tools and different colors to see how it looks. I think the whites are too much, so I'm just going to change the color a little bit. Get it closer to the base color so it doesn't pop out too much. This displacement is too much, so I'm just going to fill in all the empty areas. Not all of them, but the really big chunks, because we want to keep it subtle. And now I'm using face paint to paint in not entirely the arch. I'm still leaving some noise, some texture out to create some variation. Let's add some displacement here too, so not all the edges are super clean. As I mentioned before, here I'm not copy-pasting every single arch because I don't want them to look identical. Let's manually add some noises here as well. Don't forget the terrace. I'm just using the same texture. Now let's add some to our floor, so it's not brand new, because this house is kind of old, so it needs to be worn out in some places. Now let's create some lights. I just created a ball in the size of our lamp. Now let's change the color. Go to material section, and this time instead of glass, we're going with emit. This will allow us to have an object emitting light. Tweak a little bit with the settings. I think it's too much, especially on the wall. It's creating too much. It's emitting light from every angle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cover the back side of our lamp. So Control B to solo out our model and just color the back side of the light. Okay, let's grab again another part of this texture and try the same method for our stairs. Either you can apply the texture to all over your model, or as I mentioned before, you can just select a specific color in your texture or even multiple colors at the same time and apply the texture just to that area. Let's add some more plants. So let's just import these two, see how we can work with them. First of all, we need to scale it down, remove it to our pots, scale it down even more, select the colors, apply random noise. Let's try this other one. Same method. Scale down, try noise. There's also this option of using plant shader for MagicaVoxel, which I'm gonna link down below. You can generate plants using this shader. It's really fast and it gives you more options to work with. Or you can just create a plant from scratch if you want. This is just to speed up the process. Now just populate your scene with everything that you just made. Now I want to add some pots with flowers to add some more colors. Let's shape it up a little bit, maybe change the color. Now let's shape up this little plant a little bit more. So what I did here, using the select tool, I just picked one color. I just selected one color. I created a pattern brush out of it and then press P, press G to enter pattern brush paint mode. And then I just color on top of it, just randomly. Our trees need a little bit more trimming. So using the same method, give them some random noise color. So I just get rid of those trees, copy paste it, and flip and rotate to add variation. I'm really not happy with how this hedge was looking. So let's just get rid of it, adjust our grass. I really don't like this pot right here, so let's create a new one. Create a new object, add a cone shape, flip it, the same haul and delete and dilation technique to add a little bit more variation to the shape. Same here. Reshape it, don't forget to give it some thickness. Now let's add some damage to our walls. I'm starting to feel more happy about it all. I'm not really convinced with how the hedge is looking. So I'm just gonna borrow the tree right here. I'm gonna scale it down. I'm just gonna cut it, copy paste it a few times, flip, rotate. I think this looks more closer to a real life hedge compared to the other one. Yes, already so much better. Let's trim it a little bit, add some noise, color noise. Select all the objects together, Ctrl R to group them, and tap to intergroup and move them individually. Get rid of all the extra voxels. I just found this roof texture on the website and I'm gonna use it to add more details to my roof. The color wasn't really to my liking, so I changed the colors a little bit. The same technique, just place the texture above your object. Merge them together, go to face, paint, geometry, connectivity, and just drag it down and get rid of the texture. Just as easy. I didn't like the darker color, so I used my base color of the roof. Also this, I feel like they should be darker. Yes, now it looks more realistic, it looks more worn out, it doesn't look brand new. Now we're gonna do the same for the little chimney. But because the texture was too big, I scaled it down. Place it above your object. Union or merge it together. Use face to drag. And there you have it. The hedge is looking too flat, so I want to add some highlights to it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, select one of the colors, make a pattern brush out of it, and pick a yellow color to add some highlights to it, so it's not all green. Maybe just select the top part to add variation. Add some of the floor texture on our fountain centerpiece. Nothing too fancy, just adding some texture. Yes, it looks really good. Now with the water. The water is kind of looking too dense for me. Doesn't matter what I do with the glass setting, it's looking too dense. So there might be an issue with the object itself. So let's see. Control B to solo out our model. As I was thinking, it's too dense. So we need to get rid of all the extra voxels and just keep it as one face. So it can show a little bit of what's inside. See, it's already looking so much better. The only thing missing right now, I would want some textures in the fountain to reflect a little bit more. I'm importing this texture right here. Scale it down. Wrap tool. Make a pattern brush out of it and just color the bottom of your fountain. It already makes it so much better. It reflects a little bit. You're not really sure what's inside, but it kind of reflects that there is maybe a tile or something here. We need some props. So let's just make a chair. I don't want it to be too fancy. I don't want to import anything right now. I just want to make a quick chair from scratch to show you guys. Nothing really complicated, just using box and face in mirror mode. Yeah, the scale is too big for this house, so let's make it smaller a little bit. Now let's make a table out of the chair. Right now I'm being too lazy. Probably would have been better if I started from scratch, but this is usually how I do. Like, I try to salvage and create something new out of the assets that I already have or I already made. Control B to solo out our object. Let's add these lines. copy paste it. Let's add some wood texture for our doors and the windows. I'm changing the color of our texture. Control A and make a pattern brush out of it. In order to apply the texture on the brown part, I'm just going to select my glass. When an area is selected, your pattern brush is just going to apply on the areas that are not selected. So you can isolate the part that you want to apply your brush on. Let's apply the same wooden texture, rotate it with plus on your keyboard. The same with the chair. For the last touch-up, I just want to add some more damage, displacement, some more color to this area to keep it from looking too repetitive. Let's just add some random colors, delete some colors. You can also borrow colors from your texture right there to make it look more cohesive. So let's say you already finished with your model and you want to get into lighting. So in order to do that, we're gonna select render right here. Go into render. That's where you can have access to your light panel. As you can see, we have our light panel right here. First up, we have sun. Think of this as your main light, just like the sun in the real world. First, we have angle. These sliders move the sun's direction in your scene, so you can change the sun's position. Changing this one moves the light up and down. And this other one, left and right. This affects where shadows appear. For example, setting a low angle creates longer dramatic shadows, like during sunset or sunrise. Next, we have area. Area controls how soft or hard your shadow is gonna be. The higher the number, the softer your shadows are gonna be. The lower the number, the harder the shadows. So to demonstrate that better, let's set an angle right here for our sun. I'm gonna zoom in for you guys to see better. As I said, the lower the number, the sharper and harder the shadows are gonna be. And if I crank up the number all the way up, you're almost left with, there is still shadows, but it's very soft, maybe more like a cloudy day. So sunny day, full on sunny day, and cloudy day. Next, we have intensity. This one adjusts the brightness of your sunlight. So if you have higher values, it's gonna make your sun really bright. And if you have lower values, it's gonna have like a dimmer light, creating a moody or like an evening kind of effect. This little thing that you see here, it changes your sunlight's color. By default, sunlight is white here, but you can change its color for different moods. For example, if you want to go a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit colder, or even something alien-like, depending on the scene, you can change the color of your sunlight right here. For this scene, I'm thinking maybe let's set our sun, something that is not too flat. I don't want it to be that much of a sunny day, also not cloudy, so something in the middle would be nice right here. For now, I think the color of our sunlight is good. The last thing I want to tell you guys in sun section is this disc right here. If it's on, it means you can actually see your sun. So to show you guys that, I'm gonna go into perspective mode, and you just have to rotate around your scene to be able to find your sun. I think it's all the way up. Yes, it's right here, as you can see. So I'm gonna somehow move it around, bring it into our scene so you guys can see our sun right here. So imagine if you want to create like a moody sunset scene with this with the sun actually showing in your scene, this is how you can do it. As you can see, our sun right here is white, so I'm just gonna change the color a little bit, make it a little bit more yellowish. When you have the area all the way up, your sun's gonna appear bigger and your shadows are gonna be softer. But if you want harder shadows and smaller sun, you're gonna have to lower the value of area. So as you can see, this area is responsible for softness and hardness of your shadow and the size of your sun. Moving on to the next one, we have sky. The sky setting doesn't just control the background color, it actually affects how light behaves in your scene. And you have 3 different modes to play with when it comes to sky. We have uniform lighting, we have atmospheric scattering, and we have image-based lighting, IBL, or HDRI, as it's more common in other applications as well. But here it's called image-based lighting, IBL. So I'm gonna go through from the first one and I'm gonna explain to you what it does. So just to explain to you guys what exactly sky does, I'm gonna turn off my sunlight completely. And as you can see, even when my light source, which is my sun, is all the way off, we still have a little bit of illumination, which is coming from sky. This has a color influence over your scene. So even if your light source and shadows are removed, the sky color still tints your scene slightly. So basically, the sky acts as a global light source and it affects the overall brightness of your scene. Even without a directional sun, a bright sky can keep things well lit, as you can see right here. So if I go all the way down, you're gonna have nothing. Also, if you have reflective materials like metal or glass, the sky will actually show up in reflections, as you can see right here. Even if you don't see a background, the lighting information from the sky is still affecting how reflections appear. Just as you could change the color of the sun, you can also change the color of your sky. You can make it more like a blue, colder tone, or more warmer, or even more alien, or something like the late night kind of lighting, moody. I'm gonna turn back on my sun. So to see how it acts, how sun and sky work together, just see what's gonna happen when I lower down the intensity of sky. What you're left with is just harsh sunlight with harsh shadows without any illumination in these parts. These parts are the parts that sun is not hitting. So to fill that in, to have this kind of global illumination kind of lighting, you have to increase the intensity of your sky. It really depends on you. You can lower it down to have harsher shadows. You can increase it more to have softer ones. You can even, like, having your sun on, you can change the color of your shadows. So it's gonna change the color of your shadows. The places that are bouncing the light on, you can see how it changes the color. I'm not touching my sunlight color, it's still the same, but you can see in the shadows, this is how it's affected by this color, by the color of the sky. So it's really good to tweak with all of this. Next, we have atmospheric scattering. This mode simulates real-world sky lighting, making the environment feel more realistic. It affects how your light interacts with the atmosphere, creating effects like blue skies, haze, and color shifts. So let's go step by step. First of all, we have Rayleigh. This one is responsible for how blue your sky is. I'm gonna go to perspective mode so you can see the sky better. So if you lower down the Rayleigh, gonna have a blue sky, like a clear day. The lower values gives you bluer skies, similar to a clear day. And as you go higher, it has less blue, more neutral kind of skies, like during sunrise or sunset. So also here you can change the color of your sky. Let's keep it blue for now. Next, we have Me, if I'm saying it right. This one adjusts haze and atmospheric fog. This happens due to larger particles in the air when you have fog, dust, or pollution. So when you increase it, it's gonna create that same effect in real world. Let me lower the sun maybe again so you can see better. The lower values, you're gonna have a more crisp, clear air. The higher the value, you have more stuff going on in your atmosphere. Ozone changes the color balance of the sky. So if you have higher values, it's gonna add a bit of purple and blue to your sky. And if you have lower values, it will make it warmer and more neutral, closer to the real life. So if you want a realistic kind of scene, you can have it all the way down. If you have something more specific, more unique, maybe again like an alien world, this is what you want to go for. Next, we have image-based lighting, or HDRI. HDRI mode, which is something that I tend to use most of the time when I'm doing my scenes, because instead of using just a simple color or a gradient for the sky, it loads an actual 360 degrees high resolution environment image, which makes your lighting more natural and more realistic. So basically what HDRI does, it wraps around your scene like a giant realistic sky dome. As you can see, when I rotate around my scene, you can see it's all over. Key settings for HDRI or image-based lighting, short IBL, you have intensity, you have rotation, and you have the image right here. So the intensity, just like the other ones, controls how bright the HDR lighting is. Let me turn down the intensity of my sun. So we're just getting, as you can see, there is no light in our scene. So if I increase the intensity of my image, it controls how bright your HDR is lighting your scene. rotation adjusts the angle of the HDRI, changing where the light and reflections hit your scene. And next we have HDRI image preview, which displays currently loaded HDRI map, so you can see what's influencing your lighting. And this is the name. As I mentioned before, I get my HDRIs free from Polyhaven, which I will again link in the description below. You can have high quality HDRIs environments that you can download and use. You can have natural lights, low contrast, high contrast. You can also make your own HDRIs. If you're into photography, you can actually create your own HDRI images using a 360-degree camera by stitching multiple photos together. This way, you can light your voxel scenes using your own custom-made environments. So to access your HDRI or to import a new one, you just simply click on the picture right here and it brings up the folder. You have IBL folder in your MagicaVoxel location. So you can just simply put all the HDRI you download and put it in folder, or you can just access it through your own folders right here. And then from there, it's just a matter of switching up to see what works best for your scene. When you're in orthographic camera, you can't really see the details of your HDRI. If you want to see or even use it as a background for your scene, you have to be either in perspective or free camera mode. This is how I do some first-person kind of shots having a background actually. I just use that HDRI as my background. You can adjust the intensity, so if you have lower value, it's gonna be darker. If you have higher value, it's gonna be brighter. And then you can rotate your HDRI around the scene to pick a good angle for your light. But this is not what I'm looking for right now. I want something with more harsh shadows. Partly cloudy sky with some greenery around. I usually don't render my scenes in perspective mode. It's just a personal choice. I just like this view way better than perspective. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this HDR right here. How it's hitting the house, how it's highlighting, how it's illuminating my scene. It's like a really happy sunny day in this little villa here. For example, if you want to have a night scene, it's actually really kind of cute. If I want to make it better, maybe I just lower the intensity of it a little bit, rotate it to a better angle. And maybe just create a moonlight kind of effect. Make the shadows softer a little bit. So yeah, as you can see, it's just a matter of playing, settings, Just experiment with them and see what you like, see what's your preference, what you like the best. It's just with experimenting that you're gonna find what you like and what matches your scene the best. But honestly, in my opinion, definitely try out using HDR images and see how it completely changes the feel of your scene and how suddenly it just becomes so much more realistic. I think I'm really happy with this lighting. Next, we move on to fog section. As it's really obvious by the name, it just creates fog in your scene. The higher the density is, the thicker the fog's gonna be. Let me put back my sun to white. You can also set the color of your fog. And phase controls how fog interacts with light. Make it feel soft and dreamy or more dramatic and more intense. So you just have to play with it. So far, we covered every section in our light panel. Next, we're going to sample panel. This section controls how light bounces around your scene, affecting shadows, reflections, and how realistic things look. We start by diffuse. Diffuse decides how many times light bounces off surfaces before it fades out. So more bounces means a brighter scene. So for example, if I lower down my diffuse all the way down, you can see my light hits the surface and there's zero bouncing. If I set it up to 2, you can already see an improvement in my shadow. Light is bouncing around my scene and it's actually hitting the parts in the shadow as well. When you go to 5, it lights up the scene a little bit more, makes it more realistic, brighter. But honestly, above this, I don't see much difference between those, and it just makes the render heavier because it has to calculate light bouncing around the scene more, so it just increases your render time. So I usually keep it at 5. Next, we have a specular. So if you have glass, metal, or water, or any reflective surfaces, this is how you can take control of that. This controls how many times light reflects inside your reflective material. So I'm going to show you guys quickly what I mean by that. Just imagine you have multiple layers of reflective and transparent glass. So specular comes in handy here. So if you have lower values, light bounces and reflections are gonna cut off quickly. So glass looks too dark over here. But when you increase the value of specular, you can see that light goes deeper, letting you see through multiple layers of glass. So it really depends on what you're working with. If you have multiple layers of glass or you need to see it better, you can increase this value. But I also usually keep this as default because it doesn't happen that often that I have multiple layers of glass or something. So for example here, this is the only surface that I'm using glass for. I'm using a reflective transparent material. So as you can see, it doesn't make much difference right now. So I'm just gonna keep it at 5, which is gonna help me with my render time. Okay, move on to the next one, scatter. Scatter mostly affects cloud, fog, and translucent objects. Increasing scatter doesn't change much unless combined with a cloud or transparent shader. And then we have energy. Energy determines how bright the light bounces are. So if you increase the value of the energy, it means each bounce of light will stay brighter for longer before it fades. But honestly, personally, I don't mess with these settings much. When you crank it up, you don't really see a big, huge difference in the end, but it does slow down rendering. So most of the time, I just stick with the default values since they already work well. I'm stepping away from our cozy little home to focus entirely on materials and display settings. Now let's get into it. First up, we have the material panel. This is where we tell MagicaVoxel how our voxels should look. First, we have diffuse, the basic material. Diffuse is the default, no fancy business material. It's matte, non-reflective, and perfect for walls, floors, and natural materials like stone. Next, we have metal. So in order to see that, first of all, you have to increase metallic value, which is something that controls how metal-like the surface is. Next, we have surface roughness. Roughness adjusts how smooth or rough the metal appears. So if you have a low or zero roughness, you're gonna have a perfect mirror-like reflections. But if you have a higher value of roughness, you're gonna have a brushed metal, kind of like factory metal or scratched. Next, we have IOR, or index of refraction, which affects how light bends and reflects on your surface. Next, we have specular, which controls the brightness of reflections. If you have lower values, you're gonna have weaker, softer reflections. If you have higher ones, it's gonna be brighter and more intense reflection. Next, we have emit. To show you guys that, I'm going to create a little cube right here to use as an emitting object. So what emit is, it is used to make a voxel glow and emit light. First, we have emission. Emission controls the brightness of the glow. So when you increase it, you can see it is emitting light, but it's not as much because you have to have your power up. Power controls how much the light actually spreads in the scene. That's how you can actually see your lights better. And then we have LDR, which is short for low dynamic range, which controls the overall intensity and color saturation of the glow. So for example, if you have your LDR at 0, the cube is glowing, but it looks less saturated than your original color that you picked for it. So if you want the color of your light to show, you have to increase LDR. Okay, next up, we have glass. The glass material lets you create transparent, reflective surfaces with different levels of transparency and roughness. Let me just put more objects in front of the glass so you guys can see it better. So let's increase transparency. And then we have roughness. Roughness controls how sharp or blurry reflections appear. So if you have a low roughness, you're gonna have perfectly clear glass, like a clean window. But if you have higher roughness values, you're gonna have something like a frosted glass. Next, we have index of refraction, or IOR, which controls how light passes through and changes direction inside a transparent object. So the higher the refraction value, the more reflective the glass appears. If you set it close to 1, the object becomes nearly invisible, like water. And at higher values, glass starts to look more reflective. Just tweak it and see what works best. In the glass options, we have these 4 icons that you can see here. First one is absorb media. The density slider affects how much light gets absorbed. So if you have low density, you're gonna have almost clear glass. And if you have high density, you're gonna have thicker and more colored glass that absorbs more light. For the density value, you can go above 100 to see the effect even better. Okay, next we have scatter media, which is the cloud icon over here. What it does is it adds foggy or smoky effects inside the glass material. So as usual, the density controls how thick the fog is. Higher the value, stronger the effect, and phase adjusts how the light scatters inside the glass. Next, we have emissive media, which is the sun icon. What it does is it turns the glass material into a glowing surface. Again, you have the density and the phase to play with. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a glowing piece of plastic or something like that. But what's the difference between emissive media and emit material? What's the real difference? Let me just quickly copy paste this so I can show them next to each other. So for this one, we have emissive media, and for the other one, we're gonna have emit material. So basically, when you increase the emission value, the object glows and illuminates nearby surfaces. But emissive media, yes, it looks bright. It does light up a little bit the surrounding area, but it doesn't actually emit light the way emit material does it. So objects using emissive media appear to glow, but don't actually cast light onto other objects. But if you need something to actually light up a scene, you have to use emit material. If you just want something to glow on its own, but not affect lighting as much, you can use emissive media. I hope it's clear to you guys. If you still have any questions, you can ask me in the comments. I would love to answer you guys. Okay, next we have subsurface scattering media. What it does is it scatters light inside the material instead of just passing straight through. So it creates soft glowing effect in translucent materials like wax, skin, or frosted glass. To explain to you guys, I'm going to go to another scene of mine to show you. So as you can see, I'm increasing the transparency of this box all the way up. As you can see, this is like a blurry frosted glass. But now let's go to subsurface scattering. You crank up the density all the way, even above 100. To see the effect better, maybe let's change the color. Not sure if you can see, but it somehow reminds me of like a skin or wax. So basically, light enters and diffuses inside the object before exiting, making it glow naturally, as you can see. Okay, back to our simple scene. Now let's go to blend material. Blend material lets you combine different material properties. It's like a mix and match magic. Think of it as the best of both worlds. It can be partially reflective like metal, slightly transparent like glass, or even something in between. So just as other panels, we have roughness, IOR, specular, metallic, transparent, and those other options to control. So just to play around and see how it works. Maybe you can have it a really high transparency and a little bit reflective like metal. Creates kind of like a plastic, specific kind of plastic. You can even change the color to see better. I really love this kind of transparent plastic vibes. Now let's try with the cloud media. Let's see how it works. Still kind of looks like plastic. And this is subsurface scattering, more metallic surface. It's just a matter of playing around with the settings. I'm going to apply the blend material on this little cube over here, so maybe it helps you understand better. I'm making it hollow, so you can see how light reacts when it enters. Just playing around, a little bit of metallic surface to have a nice reflection. See how different media and settings can have different vibes and different feels to the material. It's just a matter of playing around. So blend is perfect for unique materials that don't fit into just metal or glass. Okay, next let's move on to cloud. So to show you guys that, just created some random shapes with voxel tool and put them on top of each other, copy pasted, rotated as we always do, to somehow create an illusion of a cloud. Obviously, it's not the perfect shape for a cloud, but it does the job. In cloud section, we again have the density and the phase. Density, which controls how thick or thin the cloud or fog is. So the lower the density, the thinner the clouds you're gonna have, and the higher density, you're gonna have heavy storm clouds, thick smoke, or deep fog. And phase adjusts how light interacts with the cloud material. In the last video, we were talking about scatter. So scatter controls how deep light travels through the cloud material. So if you have a higher scatter, it creates softer, more glowing clouds. But if you have lower scatter, it makes the clouds darker and denser. But the thing is, if you increase scatter too much, it's gonna take up more time to render and it's gonna make your scene heavier. Unless you really need it, I would say just keep it at the default. And to get the most out of our cloud material while we're rendering, we have to have MIS scatter on. MI scatter is all about how light interacts with fog and other transparent materials. It actually helps them blend more naturally with their surroundings. So it's always good to remember to have it on when you have any kind of volumetric material in your scene. Again, we have this 4 media for our cloud material as well. Emissive material turns the cloud into a light-emitting fog, which is useful for if you want some glowing, fantasy kind of clouds. And subsurface scattering. So let's get back to our cloud. You remember I told you how important lighting is. So let me show you how just a change of HDR or like a lighting setup can affect your cloud material. So let's go for like a golden hour sunset kind of HDR. Lower down intensity of our sun. to just have the light coming from HDR. See how it looks like a puffy, dreamy kind of cloud? You can't even see as much that the model is kind of messed up and it's not perfect cloud shape. So it's just a matter of playing around and finding the right setting for your shape. Let's try another. See how different it is with each HDR? So you can either have really realistic kind of clouds, or you can have fantasy, stylized kind of clouds with different settings. Can you see how ground color is actually affecting cloud? Let's bring in another HDR just to see how it looks. I love how a volumetric material reacts with light in MagicaVoxel. Now that our material look amazing, let's improve how light interacts with them using the sample panel. Let me just turn off everything so we can go through them one by one together. First up, we have stochastic mode. This helps smooth out noisy or grainy renders. It's really great for cleaner results, but keep that in mind that it slows down rendering a bit. So you can keep it for your final renders or when you want to see how everything looks. Next, we have MIS Reflect, which is short for Multiple Importance Sampling. This one is to improve your reflective surfaces in the final render. It sharpens reflections, making them look crisp and more realistic. MI Scatter I already explained in our cloud material. Next up is Pixelated mode. So let me zoom in to show you what it actually does. So as you can tell by the name, this setting forces this kind of pixelated look on your render. You're going to have sharp edges everywhere, no smooth shading, everything is pixel perfect, kind of like pixel art. So if you're going for that classic pixel art style, this setting is your best friend. Next, we have anti-aliasing. Can you see all those jagged edges? The lines don't look that smooth, but if you have this setting on, it softens the edges and makes everything look cleaner and more sharper. Next, we have shadow. This one controls basic shadows in your scene. Having it off makes your scene look flat and without a depth. But if you have it on, it definitely adds more depth and realism to your scene. I would say keep this on for most renders unless you're doing a stylized look. Okay, next we have TR shadow or transparent shadows. It makes light pass through instead of creating solid black shadows. I'm going to quickly create a transparent cube right here to show you guys what I mean. So you can see here, TR shadow is off. So the shadow casted by this transparent cube is kind of black. Not black, but it doesn't have any color. But as soon as you turn on TR shadow, you can see the shadow now is tinted and is affected by the color of our glass. It adds a nice layer of realism to your scene. Okay, next in geometry section, we have sparse. Let me bring up another scene so you guys can see it better. This is one of my older work. So when I render this scene, which is a rather big and heavy scene with sparse off, you can see that my model is cut off. When you have a higher voxel count scene or a bigger scene, in order to have all of your scene visible, you have to have sparse on in your renders to be able to see the whole scene. Actually, now that we are here, this is the perfect model to show you another sample of when you have MIS scatter on. Can you see how it affects the fog? Or when I turn off and on MIS reflection and MIS scatter. They really improve the overall look of your renders, so make sure to have them on, at least for your final renders. By the way, the material I used for base of this cube is cloud. And the material I'm using here, as you can see, is just a self-illuminating transparent glass. Now let's get back to our simple scene again, and let's go to the next tab, which is the display. Display panel controls how your scene looks while rendering in MagicaVoxel. First, we have grid section. But first of all, you have to display your grids on the bottom of the panel to be able to see the grid. So toggle it on. Now you can see the grids. The first one is space. It means the space between each cell. Also, you can change the color of your grid. And you can change the thickness of it. Here you can see it says ground and it's on. What it means is you only are going to have the grid applied on your ground. If you turn it off, the grid is going to be applied on all of your objects. Let me change the color so you can see better. So let's turn it back to ground. Change the color of the grid. You can still have grid even if you don't have the ground. So let me just turn off the ground. You can still see the grid on your objects without even having a ground. Next, we have edge section. So edge defines voxel borders. So to display edges, press Ctrl E or go down, click on this icon over here to display your edges. Something I forgot to mention when we were in material panel is, let's just say that you want to turn everything, every object in your scene into one specific material. You have this all button right here on the right. If you have it on and if you change to any material, it's going to apply that material to your whole scene. It will even apply it if you have a ground, it will apply it to your ground. That's actually one way to have a reflective ground. So you can see as I change the settings, it's applying it to all of my scene and all of my objects. Okay, back to our display panel. With edge width, you can control how thick or thin the outlines around voxels appear. So you can control the thickness of the edge. You can also change the color of the edge. Let me just turn it back off. Next, we have ground. Ground is base of your scene. So when you turn it on and off, it turns the ground plane on and off. And for ground, you only have one setting, which is horizon. So the horizon setting controls how the ground blends into the sky. When you have it at 0, you can actually see a sharp line separating your ground and the sky. You can see the horizon line. And as you increase the value of the horizon, it creates a smoother gradient and adds more depth to your scene. Next up, we have background section. Let me just turn off my ground so you can see the background better. Again, we need to display background down here to be able to see. You can change the color of your background. And you see this transparent option here. If you have that on, it will make the background fully transparent. So it would just export your objects with a transparent background. Let's turn back on the ground. Next, we have scale section. This tool allows you to stretch or resize your model along these 3 axes. As you can see, it stretches your whole scene in X, Y, and Z axes. Next, we have shape section. So this section lets you change how voxels are rendered in your scene, from classic cubes to smooth organic shapes. Actually, for this one, I'm going to bring up one of MagicaVoxel's default voxel files, this cute little T-Rex over here, so you can see better. First, we have cube, which is the classic voxel look. Next, we have Lego, which turns voxels into Lego bricks, with that signature stud on top, which is really cool. The next one is MC, or marching cubes. It converts all those blocky voxels into soft forms. It's great for sculpting, terrain, and organic shapes. Next, we have clay, which is a soft sculpted look. It's kind of similar to marching cubes, but with a more handmade sculpted effect. Next, we have sphere, which turns every voxel into a sphere. On the bottom, you see this cell value that you can increase or decrease, which adjusts the size of the sphere. Cylinder is the same as sphere. It replaces voxels with this cylindrical shape, which you can still control the size with cell. I just wanted to add a quick note here. If you're using any shape besides the cube, you might notice things don't work when sparse in geometry section is on. I'm not exactly sure why this happens. I would have loved to have, I don't know, a Lego effect on my bigger scenes. I still haven't found a way to keep the sparse on while having different shapes, so I don't use it often. But if you know a fix, please do drop a comment and let me know. This is something that's been on my nerves for so many years. So yeah, I'd love to figure it out together. So this is one of my older works where I want to show you guys how I use the simple materials we just talked about to make this. You can see this is the setting I used for transparent materials. For emissive materials. You can see how different materials can change the whole vibe of your scene. Now we go into camera settings. Let me close it all up so we can start together. First up, we have lens. The lens settings define how your camera views objects, affecting perspective and distortion. This number you see here controls the field of view, or FOV, just like real-world camera lenses. A wide-angle lens captures more of the scene, but it distorts the perspective. So if you have higher values in your field of view number, it is going to exaggerate your perspective. And if you go lower with the value, objects are going to appear more flat and less distorted. It's really like dealing with real-life camera and lenses. Below the lens setting, you'll see three options: perspective, stereographic projection, or SG, and panoramic camera, or pano. Perspective camera is the default setting, and it mimics a real-world camera. Objects farther away appear smaller, and the closer objects get to the lens, to the camera, they're gonna look bigger, just like in real life. Next one is SG, or stereographic projection. So when you turn this on, adds a subtle curvature to your scene. It's kind of similar to a fisheye lens in real life, as you can see. Kind of warps your perspective. And the next one, panoramic camera, or 360 view. This one is used for rendering full 360 images. If you want to create an HDRI with your scene, or if you want to use your environment in VR, if you know how to use it, this is the camera setting for that. Now let's talk about depth of field. Depth of field controls how much of your image is in focus, just like it does in real-life cameras. But as you can see here, when I change the value of aperture, nothing happens because you have to have depth of field button right here turned on. So either you can insert a number, or you can just simply click on any object you want to be in focus on in your scene. And then it locks the focus on that specific object. So as you can see, when I click on different parts of my video, it changes the depth of field. So if you noticed in the background where I have sources of light, and it's mostly not in focus, you can see all this bokeh effects, which is all those colorful circles in the background. So you have two settings to control that effect. One is rotation and the other one is blade. Blade actually controls the number of edges in your bokeh effect. So when you have it at default, which is 0, you're going to have smooth bokeh in the shape of a sphere. But as you increase it, it creates polygonal bokeh. So if you have, for example, 3 blades, creates this kind of triangle. And then the rotation controls the angle of the blur effect when you're using it. As you can see, it changes the direction. Okay, now that we've got the camera settings down, let's talk about film settings. First up, we have exposure. Exposure controls the overall brightness of your render. So if your render looks too dark, you can just increase exposure setting instead of manually tweaking lights in your scene. And then we have vignette. Vignette adds these dark edges to your image, so it puts more attention on the center. Next one is ACES. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. This one ensures accurate colors and lighting. It mimics real-world light behavior, so it prevents your scene from overexposure or unnatural shadows. So overall, this option keeps the lighting realistic. Next up, we have Bloom. Bloom adds a soft glow to all of your light sources. You have 4 different settings for Bloom. First one is Mix. Mix adjusts the intensity of the bloom effect. Size determines how far the glow spreads, like how big they should be. So aspect creates this star kind of effect, but the shape of it really depends on how many blades you have. And you can see you can rotate, or you can change the number of blades, which changes the effect. And threshold is to control which light sources trigger bloom. And if you have lower values, you're gonna have more bloom effect. If you have higher values of threshold, it's gonna include less lights. Just remember that you cannot have bloom effect in any of your renders. Bloom effect only works if you do a screen capture on the left corner. For the higher resolution renders or any turntable or animation, you'll have to add bloom manually in post-processing and in other programs. As we talked about it before, you also have some extra camera settings down here. So instead of manually moving your camera with the mouse, you also have these settings down here that you can have more control over your camera movements. So these ones just control the position of the camera in space. So if you find your camera movements is too fast or too slow, tweaking these settings can make navigation smoother. You can also control the field of view right here. It's the same as the one up top in lens settings. And you can control the speed of your camera. So speed controls how fast the camera moves overall. And lastly, we have mouse sensitivity. So it adjusts your mouse movements. So for example, if you're working with a huge scene, you can increase the speed setting to navigate around your scene faster. You can also use these numbers right here, or A, D, Q, and E on your keyboard to rotate around your scene. Now moving on to the next panel, which is our image settings. This is where you can do high resolution renders of your scene. So first one is photo mode. Photo mode is the most basic and commonly used render setting. It captures a single high quality image of your whole scene. So you have width and height, and you can render really high resolution renders of your scene. Also, another thing you have to keep in mind here is the amount of your samples. The more samples you have, it's going to result in smoother, more high quality, high resolution render and less noise, but it's definitely going to slow down your whole render time. So usually you can use this for your final renders. So the more samples you have, the less noisy, higher resolution, higher quality render you will have. And then after you set everything, you just hit render and save your file. Next, we have turntable. turntable automatically spins your model in a circle, literally like having your model showcasing in a 360 degree on a turntable. It's perfect if you want to showcase your design from all angles. So instead of moving the camera manually, MagicaVoxel automatically rotates your model and it generates a series of images. But remember that MagicaVoxel does not generate a video file. It just generates separate images or separate frames, and then you'll need to combine these frames into a video or a GIF in an external program. The angle setting controls how far your model rotates. The default is 360, so it means you will have one full spin around your model. So for example, if you have like a 180 angle, you will have a half turn. Frame settings determines how many images or frames are going to be generated in one full rotation. So the less frames you have, the model is going to rotate faster, but also it might look jumpy. I slowed it down a little bit so you can see. But the more frames you have, the model is gonna rotate more smoothly and more naturally. You can see here, I have 360 frames for 360 angle. So it means for each frame, it's rotating my model 1 degree. You can already see how smoother it's rotating now. And if you want a seamless loop, it's better to keep your angle at 360. And the blur setting in turntable mode simulates motion blur or like a directional blur. So it adds a slight blur effect to each frame. This is kind of similar to what happens in real life when taking a photo and an object is moving fast. But personally, I usually keep it at 0 to have a sharper render, because if I want, I can add some motion blur later on during post-processing. Another thing to keep in mind is you have to make sure that your model is centered in your view. Otherwise, your turntable is not going to be perfect, the center of your frame. So you can check down here when you rotate around, or with A or D keys on the keyboard to rotate around your model and see if it's in the center of your frame throughout the whole spin. Now that your settings are ready, it's time to render the animation. So you just press render and it will create a PNG sequence of each frame that you have to pile up together in another software or program. The last part in image settings is animation. This is a frame-by-frame animation, which I can cover in another tutorial if you guys want. You just have to let me know in the comments if I should do a tutorial on that or not. Okay, now let's get back to our cozy little house that we finished together. And now let's do a render. If you remember when I talked about camera position, save and load, this is my saved camera position. Let's go to photo mode, set the width and height, 10K by 10K height and width. I'm going to also set my image size, the same aspect ratio as my output render. Set the samples, maybe 5K, because here I don't think I need more than 5K. And then I hit render, and then I'll give it a name and save it. And you wait for it to finish the render, and then you're done. And just like that, we did it. We started this house from scratch, and throughout this whole series, we built it up together piece by piece, learning everything from modeling, texturing, to lighting and rendering, and all the cool tricks in between. But this is just the beginning. From now on, I'll be taking your suggestions. So if there's anything specific you guys want to learn, drop it in the comments. I'll also be making more videos diving deeper into tips, tricks, and more advanced techniques to help you push your voxel art even further. So if you enjoyed this series, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.